Summary Nudge, Improving Decisions About Health, W. Richard H. Thaler, Cass R. Sunstein. Book link. Click here. Here is a summary of the key points. A school cafeteria director, Carolyn, conducted experiments to see if rearranging the food items could influence students' choices. She found she could increase or decrease consumption of various foods by up to 25% based on how the foods were displayed and arranged. This shows that small context and choice architecture changes can significantly influence behavior and choices. The influence can be for better or worse. Carolyn can use this power to encourage healthier or less healthy eating. There are several ways Carolyn could arrange the food: arrange for the students' well-being; paternalistic, randomly mimic what students would choose on their own; hard to determine; maximize profits from suppliers; corrupt, maximize profits, may make students less healthy. As the choice architect who designs how the food is presented, Carolyn has a responsibility and influence over the choices. There is no neutral design. Choice architecture and physical architecture are analogous. Just as there is no neutral architectural design, there is no neutral choice architecture. The choice architect is responsible for organizing the context in which people make decisions. Many people are choice architects in their roles, often without realizing it. Architects must deal with many constraints in designing buildings, including legal, aesthetic, and practical ones. Ultimately, however, they must create a functional building with specific elements like doors, windows, stairs, bathrooms, etc. Even small details in a building's design can significantly impact users' behavior. For example, strategically placed flies etched into urinals at the Schiphol Airport men's rooms improved accuracy and reduced spillage by 80%. The insight that everything matters in design can be paralyzing and empowering. Architects and designers can positively influence behavior by making even small, thoughtful choices. They have to ultimately make specific choices, just as a food architect has to arrange lunches in a particular way. These choices can be used to nudge people towards better options. Libertarian paternalism refers to design choices that steer people in better directions while preserving freedom of choice. It counters the notion of homo economicus, that people always make perfect, rational choices. In reality, Homo sapiens have cognition, memory, willpower, and more limitations. For example, many people struggle with obesity and making healthy diet choices, showing that our choices are not always ideal or rational. Libertarian paternalism and nudges can help address these human limitations by guiding choices without restricting them. Even for essential life choices regarding health, finances, and more, people often welcome these nudges to help them achieve their goals. Overall, the evidence shows that human judgment and decision-making can be pretty flawed, suggesting room for improvement from choice design and nudges. Humans make systematic errors and biased judgments in their forecasts and decision-making. They suffer from cognitive limitations and biases like unrealistic optimism, the planning fallacy, and inertia, status quo bias. In contrast, economists traditionally assume rational and unbiased econs. Econs make optimal choices and unbiased forecasts. However, humans are not econs. Choice architects can improve people's lives by designing choice environments that account for human tendencies and biases. They can do so through gentle nudges that influence behavior without restricting freedom of choice. Many critics of nudging and paternalism falsely assume that people always choose what's in their best interest. However, people often need to choose better, especially in unfamiliar and complex situations. Some choice architecture is inevitable, so nudges are unavoidable. Choice architecture can be used benevolently to improve welfare. It need not involve coercion. Governments already shape choice through the policies and rules they set. Nudges can help correct people's cognitive limitations while preserving freedom of choice. Successful companies and policies often employ nudges and good choice architecture, though sometimes subtly and behind the scenes. Choice architecture has the potential to improve lives at scale significantly. However, it also risks manipulation if misused. Overall, nudges must be carefully designed to benefit individuals and society. The key message is that good choice architecture and nudging can improve people's lives at scale, but they must be applied judiciously and for benevolent ends. They represent an alternative to unconstrained choice on the one hand and mandates on the other. Architecture, like the design of choice environments, is frequently overlooked but profoundly influences behavior. For example, the default options the University of Chicago selected for employee benefits have significant consequences, so they should be chosen carefully based on what employees would likely prefer if they were paying close attention. Libertarian paternalists argue that choice architects should design environments to influence people in their best interests while preserving freedom of choice. This approach can appeal to both conservatives and liberals. Conservatives value freedom of choice but want to help people. Liberals want to help people but value choice. Libertarian paternalism achieves both. Two examples illustrate how human judgment can be systematically biased in predictable ways. People perceive two identical tabletops as different shapes because the orientation and legs create an illusion. We see what we expect to see. People's guesses about the dimensions of the tabletops are also biased and overconfident. We know more than we do. These examples show that human cognition works well but is prone to certain biases and errors. Understanding these tendencies can help improve choice architecture. The critical insight is that behavioral economics has borrowed from psychology the recognition that human judgment is often flawed in systematic and predictable ways, even for knowledgeable people. We are human, not icons, rational beings. In summary, thoughtful choice architecture and libertarian paternalism are needed because human judgment is prone to biases and errors that traditional economics' hypothetical rational icons do not share. By understanding how human thinking departs from the rational ideal, we can design environments that gently steer people in beneficial directions while preserving freedom of choice. Humans rely on two cognitive systems, an automatic system that is fast, intuitive, and emotional, and a reflective system that is slower, more deliberate, and logical. The automatic system uses rules of thumb, called heuristics, to make judgments. These heuristics can lead to systematic biases and errors. Anchoring is a heuristic, starting with an initial anchor point and then adjusting from there. The anchor can bias our estimates, even if we adjust from it. For example, estimates of Milwaukee's population would be affected by whether someone starts from the anchor of Chicago's population or Green Bay's. The availability heuristic relies on how easily examples come to mind. We tend to overweight events and risks that are more available in our memory. For example, we may overestimate the risk of dying in a terrorist attack or a plane crash because we have seen dramatic news coverage of such events. The representativeness heuristic involves judging the likelihood that something belongs to a category based on its similarity to our stereotype or representativeness of that category. For example, we may wrongly assume a woman is a feminist or that an artist is eccentric based on stereotypes. In summary, the automatic system relies on heuristics which can accurately guide us in some cases but also frequently and systematically lead us to make errors and biases in judgments and decisions. Understanding these tendencies can help us improve our thinking and make better choices. The representativeness heuristic refers to people's tendency to judge the probability of an event by how similar it is to their stereotype of such events. Like availability and anchoring, this heuristic is often helpful but can also produce biases. In particular, people may perceive patterns where none exist simply because specific sequences seem representative of randomness. For example, in an experiment, people said it was more likely for a feminist bank teller named Linda to be a bank teller and active in the feminist movement than just a bank teller. This is impossible, but the former description seemed more representative of the information provided about Linda. Similarly, if a coin comes up heads 3 times in a row, people may wrongly assume the coin is biased when in fact, short streaks of one outcome are entirely consistent with randomness. These biases tend to make rare but memorable events seem more probable than they are. They can lead to poor risk assessments, such as when people overestimate the likelihood of homicides relative to suicides or dying from a terrorist attack versus the flu. They may also lead to poor policy decisions, with governments focusing resources on the threats that habitually come to mind rather than the most severe possible dangers. The key to overcoming these biases is simple: focus on statistics and probabilities rather than individual examples and personal experiences. With conscious effort, people can train themselves to rely less on heuristics like representativeness and availability and more on careful consideration of frequencies and likelihoods. This may require deliberate adjustments to account for the tendency to anchor on whatever starting value one has in mind. However, the human tendency to spot illusory patterns and make flawed probability judgments can be overcome with practice. Londoners during World War II worried that German V-1 and V-2 rocket strikes seemed targeted because they were clustered, but analysis showed that the locations were random. People perceive patterns that are not there. The hot hand fallacy in basketball, the belief that a player is more likely to make a shot after making previous shots, is a myth. Players who recently made shots are no longer likely to make their next shot. Cancer clusters, or higher than expected cancer rates in a neighborhood, often scare people and lead to government intervention but are usually just random fluctuations, not caused by anything. People, including students, need to be more confident in their abilities and optimistically overestimate their likelihood of success or being above average. Nearly all couples believe their marriage has almost no chance of ending in divorce, despite the overall 50% divorce rate. Entrepreneurs also usually overestimate their odds of success. Unrealistic optimism leads people to underestimate risks to themselves, like being fired, having health issues, or having accidents. Smokers know the risks but think they will not get cancer. The examples show how the representativeness heuristic, overconfidence in our abilities, and unrealistic optimism can lead to misperceptions of randomness and risk. We perceive patterns that are not real, think we are less at risk than others, and overestimate our chances of success. People are prone to unrealistic optimism. They underestimate their chances of experiencing adverse life events and health issues. Lotteries thrive on this optimism. Loss aversion. Losing something makes people feel twice as bad as gaining the same thing makes them feel good. This leads to inertia and status quo bias. The status quo bias leads people to stick with their current situation. This is partly due to a need for more attention and the use of heuristics like yeah, whatever. Default options are powerful because of this bias. Framing effects. The way information is presented influences how it is perceived. This is because people are often passive and mindless decision makers. Their reflective systems do not check how reframing the question might change the answer. Frames must be selected carefully as they are potent nudges. These psychological tendencies, unrealistic optimism, loss aversion, status quo bias, and framing effects, show that human decision-making is prone to biases and imperfections. However, understanding these tendencies can help design choice architectures and nudges to help people. Due to limited time and attention, people must think more deeply about every choice. They rely on rules of thumb that can lead to poor decisions. Even for important life decisions, people are easily influenced or nudgeable. An example is drivers taking a dangerous curve on Chicago's Lakeshore Drive. Many need to slow down sufficiently and crash. The city painted lines on the road that get closer together going into the curve, giving the illusion of speeding up. This nudges drivers to slow down. Another example is a group of people who could not stop eating cashews before dinner, ruining their appetites. At first, they preferred eating just a few nuts, then not eating more. However, if the nuts had stayed out, they would have eaten them all, their least preferred choice. This shows dynamically inconsistent behavior, where preferences change quickly over time. Two factors explain this: temptation. People's state of arousal or hotness varies. When hungry or presented with appetizing food, people are in a hot state and consume more. When thinking abstractly about how much they should eat, people are in a cold state. Things that we consume more of when hot are tempting. We underestimate how much our desires change between hot and cold states. Mindlessness. People sometimes go on automatic pilot and behave mindlessly. Eating is frequently mindless, leading people to overeat whatever is in front of them, like cashews. Even stale popcorn is eaten mindlessly in large volumes. In summary, temptation and mindlessness, interacting with a two-system view of human thinking, reflective and automatic, lead to self-control and dynamically inconsistent behavior dilemmas. Nudges can help in these situations. People often eat more or make unhealthy choices due to factors outside of their control, like environmental cues. For example, in one study, people ate 53% more popcorn from large buckets even though they did not like it more. In another, people ate more soup from refilled bowls without realizing it. These behaviors show that people often act against their own self-interest or stated preferences due to mindless choices and a lack of self-control. Many smokers want to quit but don't. Many people fail to save enough for retirement, even with incentives. People use strategies to try and overcome these self-control issues. They set alarms, ask friends for help, or make bets and commitments. For example, in one study, two men made a bet to lose 30 pounds in 9 months or pay the other $10,000. They were successful and made further bets to maintain the weight loss. Governments and markets also provide ways for people to constrain themselves. Things like cigarette taxes, banning certain goods/behaviors, or allowing people to sign up for casino blocklists. Daylight saving time also acts as a nudge to get people to wake up earlier in the summer. Private companies provide self-control services to benefit both the companies and the customers. Things like Christmas savings clubs allow people to commit to saving money they cannot withdraw for a year. Although the interest rate is low, it helps people save for Christmas shopping. In summary, the key ideas are that people often act against their interests due to a lack of self-control and mindless choices. But there are private, public, and self-created strategies for overcoming these issues and nudging people toward better choices and behaviors. Liquidity. Christmas clubs prevented people from withdrawing money for a year. This lack of flexibility helped people save for Christmas gifts by making it hard to access their funds. High transaction costs. People had to make frequent deposits into Christmas club accounts, even though the accounts earn little or no interest. The inconvenience of making deposits helped people commit to saving. Christmas clubs flourished because they catered to human weaknesses, not because they were logically appealing. They helped people overcome a lack of self-control and temptation. Credit cards eventually replaced Christmas clubs by allowing people to finance Christmas shopping. Although credit cards charge high interest rates, they are more convenient than Christmas clubs. Mental accounting. People create separate mental accounts for different purposes, like rent, food, entertainment, etc. This can lead to illogical behavior, like having money in a low-interest account while carrying high-interest debt. But it can also help with self-control, like keeping house money when gambling separate from other funds. Examples of mental accounting: a professor deducts parking tickets and other fines from his intended donation to charity each year. Gamblers who keep the money they have won separate from the money they brought to gamble. They see house money as different and are more willing to bet on it. People are more willing to take financial risks with winnings from the stock market or other windfalls. They see this money as separate from their regular savings. Households that keep money in low-interest savings accounts while carrying high-interest credit card debt. They see these funds serving different purposes, even though paying off debt would be logical. Some people create separate accounts for vacations, children's college, retirement, etc. This can lead to irrational behavior but also helps with self-control. A man named Dennis treats his Social Security checks as mad money for enjoyment since he has been such a diligent saver. This is an example of a mental accounting strategy to promote spending. Dennis wanted to enjoy his retirement and not delay spending on fun activities. So he set up a separate account for his Social Security payments, which he designated his fun account. Money in this account could be used for enjoyable purchases like fancy bikes or wine but not necessary expenses like roof repairs. The summary suggests that mental accounts like Dennis's can help make life more enjoyable and secure. The chapter then discusses how humans are prone to follow the herd and be socially influenced. It gives several examples, like, teenage girls are more likely to get pregnant if they see other teens having babies. Obesity can spread through social networks. Broadcasters often copy each other, leading to trends in TV programming. Their peers influence college students' academic performance. Federal judges' rulings are influenced by the judges' votes on their panel. There are two reasons why humans follow the herd: we like to conform to groups. In experiments where people had to match lines of different lengths, participants would frequently give the same incorrect answer as the rest of the group, going against the evidence of their senses. This tendency to conform has been found across many countries and cultures. The statements and actions of others provide information. If many people do or think something, we may assume they know something we do not and follow them. In summary, humans are prone to follow the herd through a desire to conform and because we use the behavior of others as a source of information. Choice architects need to understand how to encourage beneficial social behavior and discourage harmful behavior. Here's a summary of the passage. People are prone to conform to the judgments and behaviors of others, especially unanimous groups. This is because brain scans show that conformity changes how people perceive the situation. People conform more when they know others can see their answers. They want to avoid seeming different. Unanimous groups provide the strongest pressure to conform, even on easy questions with obvious answers. Muzaffar Sharif's experiments showed how groups develop arbitrary but stable judgments and how those judgments spread to new group members. An early nudge from a confident group member could significantly influence judgments and traditions spread through pluralistic ignorance, people following them not because they agree but because they think others do. Additional experiments found conformity effects for many types of judgments. People adopted surprising views and priorities when exposed to an apparent group consensus. The spotlight effect refers to people's tendency to overestimate how much others notice and pay attention to them. This contributes to conformity and concern for social norms. In reality, others do not scrutinize individuals as much as they think. The creative anti-littering campaign in Texas, "Do Not Mess with Texas," successfully reduced littering by appealing to state pride and using celebrities. It illustrates how nudges from influential groups can change behavior. In summary, people are prone to follow the crowd due to a desire for acceptance, an assumption that the group's views are correct, and overestimating of how much others monitor them. However, these same social forces can be harnessed with the right approach to nudge people in positive directions. In the late 1990s, researchers experimented to see how much attention people paid to t-shirts. They had people wear t-shirts with Barry Manilow's face on them and join a group. On average, people guessed that 46% of the group would notice and identify Manilow, but only 21% did. This shows that people overestimate how much attention others are paying to them. Because people think others are watching them more closely, They are more prone to conform to social norms. This can influence culture, politics, and business. For example, an experiment with music downloads showed that people are more likely to download songs that others have already downloaded, leading to unpredictability in which songs become popular. Success and failure can depend a lot on early adopters. The Seattle windshield pitting epidemic of 1954 shows how social influences can spread without any orchestration. Thousands of people reported windshield damage, but there was no real damage or cause. It was a social contagion fueled by media coverage and speculation. We are also greatly influenced in subtle ways, like how much we eat. People eat much more when eating with others and tend to match how much others eat. Advertisers and politicians frequently try to take advantage of social influences by suggesting that most people prefer or are turning to their product or candidate. They are trying to trigger cascades of imitation. Ultimately, while we view ourselves as making independent judgments, we often imitate others without realizing it. No one wants to admit they chose a candidate because others did first. However, social nudges and cascades of imitation are a big part of human decision-making. People's behavior is influenced by what they perceive others around them are doing. This is known as conformity. An experiment in Minnesota found that informing people that 90% of others comply with tax laws increased tax compliance. A study in Petrified Forest National Park found that signs emphasizing that most visitors do not remove petrified wood were more effective at preventing wood removal than signs just prohibiting removal. Surveys show that most college students binge drink less than commonly perceive. Campaigns emphasizing the actual lower rates of drinking have decreased student binge drinking. An experiment providing households with information on neighborhood energy usage and emoticons as feedback decreased energy usage in above-average users and prevented the increase in below-average users. Priming refers to how subtle cues can influence the ease of bringing certain information to mind and thus influence behavior. Surveys measuring people's intentions and behavior have been shown to affect that behavior, known as the mirror measurement effect. Asking people if they intend to vote or buy a product increases the likelihood they will do so. The key lessons are: people conform to perceived social norms. Correcting misperceptions about actual norms can positively influence behavior. Subtle social cues, like emoticons or survey questions, can prime specific responses and behaviors. This priming effect can be harnessed as a nudge. The mirror measurement effect shows that measuring intentions often affects behavior. Asking about people's intentions to do something makes them more likely to then act on those intentions. People need nudges for difficult and infrequent choices, for which they get little feedback or opportunity to learn. Such choices include investment goods, for example exercising, dieting. Costs are immediate, but benefits are delayed. People tend to underinvest in these. Sinful goods, for example, smoking, drinking. Benefits are immediate, but costs are delayed. People tend to overinvest in these. Complex choices, for example, mortgages, marriages. People need more experience or practice with these high-stakes choices. The stakes of a choice and opportunities to practice do not seem to improve people's decision-making much. Economics aims to explain important life decisions, yet these provide little chance to practice. While the free market works well for simple, frequent choices, for example, groceries, it struggles with choices involving self-control or complexity. Companies often profit from, rather than fix, people's flaws and foibles. Nudges should aim to help those most prone to error and do little harm to others, following the golden rule of libertarian paternalism. The level of nudging should match the difficulty of the choice. Governments should not dictate people's complex life choices but can improve choice environments so people achieve their goals better. The key is aligning free choice and human well-being. Rare, difficult choices that lack feedback are good candidates for nudges. People often need help with choices that have delayed consequences, are complex or infrequent, and need to provide better feedback. Learning requires opportunities for repetition and clear feedback. Without feedback, people can make the same mistakes repeatedly without improving. Many important life choices, like career paths, need better feedback and practice opportunities. People often need help determining what they will like or prefer in unfamiliar domains. They rely on advice and recommendations from others with more experience. Some businesses recognize this and limit customer choice, allowing experts to guide them. While free markets often help guide choice, they sometimes fail or are manipulated. Markets work best when consumers can determine the quality and there is competition. However, for some complex products like insurance, it can be challenging for consumers to evaluate options, and companies have incentives to exploit behavioral biases. Some government intervention may be needed in these cases. The summary provides several examples to illustrate these points. including practicing putting without being able to see where the balls go, choosing an unfamiliar cuisine, selecting a mutual fund, and purchasing insurance. The key message is that nudges can helpfully guide people when free choice and markets fail or lead to poor outcomes. Humans are prone to make predictable mistakes and errors in judgment due to psychological biases and the complex interplay between our automatic and reflective systems. Choice architecture refers to the design of how options and information are presented to influence the choices people make. Choice architects, whether intentionally or not, design environments and experiences that shape how people make choices. Defaults refer to the pre-selected options if a person takes no action. Defaults are powerful because many people will passively accept the default due to inertia, status quo bias, and the desire to take the path of least resistance. Defaults should be selected carefully since they strongly influence choice. Other principles of good choice architecture include understanding stimulus-response compatibility. Signals and cues should be designed to elicit the desired intuitive responses. For example, oversized handles indicate pull, while flat plates indicate push. Accounting for cognitive limitations, do not overload people with too much complex information or too many options. Simplify when possible. Using salient and vivid information, we pay more attention to striking or emotionally exciting information. Choice architects can use this to draw attention to certain options or information. Grouping options and providing feedback, categorizing or bundling similar options make choices more accessible. People also make better choices when feedback about their selections is provided. Incentives, for better or worse, incentives powerfully influence our choices. Choice architects should design incentive systems carefully and be aware of their potentially complex effects. The key message is that choice architecture is inescapable, so we must thoughtfully design environments, products, and experiences that empower people and help them avoid errors. By understanding human psychology, choice architects can craft experiences and interfaces that make it easier for people to choose what is in their best interest. Defaults are inevitable, and the choice of default options can be controversial. Required choice, where choosers are forced to make an active choice, is sometimes preferable but only sometimes feasible or helpful, especially for complex choices. Well-designed systems expect and forgive user errors. Examples include, the Paris metro ticket machines accept tickets inserted in either orientation. This contrasts with parking garage payment machines that require exact card orientation, often leading to user frustration and delay. Modern automobiles have many error-preventing and error-forgiving features like seatbelt reminders, low fuel warnings, automatic headlights, and gas caps attached by plastic cords. These anticipate and mitigate predictable post-completion errors where people forget steps after completing a primary task. Diesel fuel nozzles are too large to fit in gasoline car fuel tanks, preventing the mistake of putting the wrong fuel in the tank, though the opposite error is still possible. This is an example of a forcing function where you have to do one thing, use the correct nozzle, to get what you want, fuel your vehicle. In summary, the good choice architecture incorporates error anticipation and forgiveness to create systems that are easy to use, minimize frustration, and prevent consequential mistakes. Required choosing and forcing functions can also help but must be applied judiciously based on the complexity and nature of the choice. Human error, rather than equipment failure, causes the majority of critical incidents in healthcare. A standard error was connecting the wrong drug to an IV line, delivering the incorrect medication. This was solved by designing equipment so that the connectors for different drugs were incompatible, making the error physically impossible. Drug compliance is an issue, especially for elderly patients on multiple medications. The ideal solution is a once-daily dose. More frequent doses increase the opportunity for error. Regular schedules, like every morning, are more accessible for people to turn into habits. Placebo pills are sometimes used on birth control pill regimens, so the person takes a pill daily to build the habit. Providing feedback to people about their performance and mistakes helps them improve. Digital cameras give instant feedback by showing the photo just taken. Fake shutter sounds provide audio feedback. Warnings about low batteries or suspicious email attachments provide feedback, but too many warnings will be ignored. The color-coded terror alert system provides useless feedback. The mapping between a choice and the outcome is easy for some decisions, like choosing an ice cream flavor, but hard for others, like choosing a medical treatment. Good choice architecture helps people improve their ability to map by making information more comprehensible. For example, stating the largest recommended print size for a digital camera is more useful than listing the megapixels. In summary, designing systems and environments to account for human errors and limitations can help people make better choices and outcomes. Feedback, simplifying information, Building good habits, and making errors physically impossible are all strategies that can be employed. Photo sizes commonly offered are 4 x 6 inches, small, 9 x 12 inches, medium, and poster size, large. It can be challenging to determine how much different products and services cost due to complex pricing schemes. Examples include credit cards, cell phone plans, mortgages, and insurance policies. A proposed solution is recap regulation, require companies to disclose all fees, rates, and formulas in a spreadsheet format. Evaluate, require companies to provide customers with an annual report of all charges incurred. Compare alternative prices, allow third-party websites to use this data to compare offers from different companies easily. As choices become more numerous and complex, people adopt simplifying strategies, like elimination by aspects. This makes choice architecture more impactful. Examples of helpful choice architecture include organizing similar options together, like paint colors, offering tools to filter and discover options, like on Netflix, using collaborative filtering to provide recommendations based on what similar people like, surprise and discovering new options are still valuable. They are relying only on what people like you like can be limiting. Americans currently have a meager personal savings rate, with many not saving for retirement. The lack of personal savings exacerbates problems with the Social Security system and people's financial security in retirement. The government has tried to encourage more personal saving through tax-advantaged accounts like IRAs and 401ks. Many people need to take full advantage of these programs. 2 suggestions to help increase personal savings: automatic enrollment in savings plans. Automatically enroll people in retirement savings plans like 401ks, with the option to opt out. This helps overcome people's inertia and tendency to procrastinate. The Save More Tomorrow program. This program automatically increases people's contribution rates to retirement savings plans like 401ks each time they get a raise. This helps address the fact that people tend to spend additional income rather than save it. People largely avoid a drop in their take-home pay by saving the increases. These nudges work because they account for the human tendencies to procrastinate and spend rather than save additional income. The traditional economic theory fails to account for these tendencies and assumes people logically save for retirement. The key reasons people fail to save adequately are inertia and procrastination. People have good intentions to save but lack the willpower to follow through. Automatic enrollment helps overcome this. Spending biases. When people get raises, they spend the additional money rather than save it. The Save More Tomorrow program helps address this bias. Lack of self-control. People have trouble exercising restraint and saving money now for the future. Nudges can impose restraint and guide people to better long-term choices. Short-sightedness. People tend to focus on the short-term overly rather than plan appropriately for the long-term future. Nudges help encourage more long-term thinking. So, nudges that account for these human tendencies and make it easy for people to do the right thing can effectively encourage better retirement saving behavior. The standard economic theory of saving for retirement assumes people rationally calculate how much they need to save and have the willpower to follow through. Most people find this problematic because the calculations are complicated, and people often need more willpower. For most of history, people did not have to save for retirement because they did not live long enough or their children cared for them. Now, government and employers have programs to help. Early programs mainly were defined benefits, where people got a fixed benefit based on their salary and years of work. These are easy for people but inflexible. Most programs now are defined contributions like 401ks where people choose how much to save and invest. These give more choices but require more work and guidance. It is hard to say if people are saving enough. Economists have differing views on how much is needed, and some save too little. However, saving too little is riskier than saving too much. Enrollment in retirement plans should be higher than it should be given the benefits. About 30% of eligible people do not enroll, even for plans with free money from employer matches. Some fail to enroll even when contributions and withdrawals have no penalties. In summary, while the standard theory of retirement saving is reasonable, in reality, people have a hard time following it and often need nudges and guidance to save adequately for their retirement. Despite the benefits of employer retirement plans, like matching contributions, many eligible employees need to join the plans or contribute more to get the full employer match. To nudge more people to join retirement plans sooner, employers can make enrollment automatic so that employees are enrolled unless they opt out. Studies show automatic enrollment dramatically increases participation rates, and the fraction of participants who drop out remains low, suggesting most employees prefer to be in the plan. Requiring employees to make an active choice about joining the plan, rather than having a default of non-enrollment, can also increase participation. Simplifying the enrollment process by providing a pre-selected savings rate and asset allocation that employees can accept by just checking a box also helps. While automatic enrollment gets more people into plans, many stick with the default low contribution rate and investment fund, which may need to be improved for retirement. To address this, employers can alter the match formula to nudge people to save more, for example, by matching 30% of contributions up to 10% of pay instead of 50% of the first 6% of pay. Education alone is not very effective in getting people to make better retirement plan decisions. Studies show a slight improvement in financial literacy and only small increases in participation after educational seminars. The Save More Tomorrow program uses choice architecture based on psychological principles to escalate employees' contribution rates over time automatically. This program recognizes that self-control is more effortless if changes happen in the future. People hate decreases in their paychecks, and people focus on nominal rather than actual dollars. Inertia is a powerful force that can either help or hinder retirement savings. The Save More Tomorrow program taps into inertia by having people commit in advance to increasing their retirement contributions in sync with future pay raises. This means take-home pay always stays the same, so people do not see the increased contributions as losses. Once enrolled, the saving increases happen automatically. The first Save More Tomorrow program in 1998 had high participation rates of 80 to 90% and increased average savings rates from around 3 to 6% to 13.6% over 3.5 years. Critical factors for success were one-on-one meetings with financial consultants who could sign people up on the spot. Easy enrollment: the easier it is to sign up, the higher the participation. Combining Save More Tomorrow with automatic enrollment is the most effective approach. Some companies have achieved 78% participation this way. Governments have helped by reducing barriers to and incentivizing these types of programs. The 2006 Pension Protection Act gave employers incentives like waiving annoying regulations if they matched employee contributions, automatically enrolled employees, and automatically increased contributions over time. However, governments can also make mistakes, like the Social Security Administration. They only provide a break-even age calculator to help people decide when to start claiming benefits. It cannot factor in critical details like life expectancy, spouse's details, future income, and impatience to determine the optimal time for each individual to start claiming. In summary, while inertia often hinders saving, programs like Save More Tomorrow show how to harness inertia and build good choice architecture to help people save for retirement. Governments and companies can support this through incentives, easy enrollment, and helpful tools for people to make the best choices. The Social Security Administration's calculator for determining when to start receiving benefits is elementary. It only considers 2 start dates and does not account for influential factors like health, work plans, income, spouse's age, etc. A better calculator could ask questions to determine these factors and provide sensible default options. Choosing when to start retirement benefits is challenging for humans and would benefit from a well-designed choice architecture. Investing for retirement is also challenging and complicated for humans. They must determine how much risk to take, often by choosing an asset allocation of stocks and bonds. Riskier allocations usually mean higher returns but more chance of loss. Determining the proper asset allocation and rebalancing periodically is difficult. Humans are prone to 2 main mistakes: short-term fluctuations are overly influencing you. For example, checking investment balances frequently and overly feeling losses, which can lead to investing too little in stocks. Relying on rules of thumb rather than calculating the precise trade-off between risk and return for their situation. To illustrate these mistakes, the example compares 2 investors. Vince frequently checks his investment balance and strongly feels losses, so he is very nervous about investing in stocks. Rip will not check for 20 years, so he is comfortable putting everything in stocks to benefit from their strong long-term returns. The lesson is that less frequent monitoring leads to better investing in stocks. Most investors should invest more in stocks in the long run. In summary, retirement investing is challenging but important. Choice architecture and understanding human mistakes and tendencies can help improve decisions. Less frequent monitoring of investments may help overcome some biases to enable better long-term investing. Many investors choose to invest nearly all of their money in stocks. Investors increasingly invested more in stocks in the 1990s, believing stocks could only increase. However, an analysis of investor behavior shows that their market timing could have been better. They bought more stocks when prices were high and sold when prices were low. Investors often use simple rules of thumb, like splitting money evenly between stocks and bonds. Even experts like Harry Markowitz admitted to using such a basic rule. The diversification heuristic or the 1/n heuristic lead investors to naively diversify by splitting the money evenly among options. Studies show that the options offered in retirement plans significantly impact investor choices. More stock funds lead to higher allocations to stocks. Lifestyle funds that provide pre-diversified portfolios based on risk tolerance can help, but investors often do not fully utilize them and end up with aggressive portfolios without realizing it. Many investors invest heavily in their company's stock, not properly diversifying. This can lead to significant losses if the company struggles. The key points are that individual investors are prone to poor market timing, overconfidence in stocks, naive diversification, and concentrating investments in familiar companies like their employers. Rules of thumb and options in plans drive behavior more than prudent portfolio management principles. This can negatively impact investment returns. Charles Prestwood invested most of his retirement funds in Enron stock because the company encouraged employee stock ownership, and he was loyal to Enron. When Enron collapsed, Prestwood lost his entire life savings of $1.3 million in Enron stock. Now he lives on a small pension and Social Security. Many employees invest too much of their retirement funds in their company's stock, which is risky. Company stock is riskier than a diversified portfolio, and employees can lose their jobs and savings if the company struggles. Employees do not need to understand the risks of company stock and think their company's stock is less risky than it is. They also assume the solid past performance of the stock means it will continue to perform well. Having more than 10% of retirement funds in company stock is risky. Diversifying investments is safer. Laws give company stock preferential treatment in retirement plans, even though it is risky. Treating company stock like other investments could help address this issue. Sell More Tomorrow plans gradually shift employees' company stock into diversified funds over time. This reduces risk while avoiding signaling that the company's stock is a bad investment. Using good choice architecture and default options in retirement plans can help guide participants to better investing decisions, like diversified portfolio options instead of too much company stock. The key ideas are that many employees invest too much in their company's stock, putting them at risk. This concentration in company stock is due in part to preferential treatment under laws and encouragement from the company. Using choice architecture to encourage diversification and offer better default options can help address this issue and protect employees' savings. Mortgage shopping has become more complicated with many options like fixed rate, variable rate, interest only, and teaser rate mortgages. This makes it hard for people to choose the best option for them. Studies show that disadvantaged borrowers like minorities, the less educated, and those who use mortgage brokers pay hundreds to over $1,000 more for their mortgages, even controlling for risk. The mortgage market has become very complicated, putting unsophisticated borrowers at a disadvantage. They are more likely to get bad advice from people like mortgage brokers helping them. Mortgage brokers dealing with wealthy clients have a more incentivized to give fair advice. Those dealing with people with low incomes want to make money quickly. Views on subprime loans are extreme. Some call them all predatory, but higher risk loans legitimately have higher rates. At the same time, some subprime lenders prey on the disadvantaged with deceptive practices. Regulation is needed to prevent deception and ensure transparency. More options and complexity help sophisticated borrowers but hurt the disadvantaged, who struggle to evaluate options and are more vulnerable to bad advice and deception. Regulations promoting transparency and preventing predatory practices can help. Defaults also need to be discouraged. Choice architecture could make the best options more salient and help people see the total long-term costs of different mortgages. In summary, the mortgage market's increasing complexity and options help some but disadvantage others. Regulations, nudges, and better choice architecture could benefit the disadvantaged significantly. Microfinance loans provide credit to poor people in developing countries who otherwise would not have access to loans. While the interest rates are very high, often over 200%, the borrowers benefit significantly from these loans. Subprime lending, like mortgages, is controversial. On the one hand, it provides credit to high-risk borrowers who would otherwise be denied. This allows some to become homeowners or business owners. However, subprime loans often involve predatory practices that exploit unsophisticated borrowers. Brokers push risky, confusing loan terms with high fees and interest rates. Borrowers need to help understand all the paperwork and end up with bad deals. Reforms are needed to improve the choice architecture for subprime borrowers. Banning predatory loans is too blunt and risks cutting off credit to deserving borrowers. Instead, the proposal requires simplified disclosure showing total fees and interest payments over time. This would make it easier for borrowers to compare offers and shop around. Providing detailed data in a machine-readable format allows third parties to offer comparison services and advice. Limiting the types of allowed loans and requiring estimates to be valid for 30 days could help with mortgages. However, a better approach is to require lenders to provide simplified recap reports showing total fees and interest charges and possible worst-case scenarios for variable rates. This information would facilitate shopping around and the emergence of third-party comparison services. Evidence shows borrowers get the best deals when total upfront fees are low or zero, so recap reports could significantly benefit consumers. Student loans also involve complications like variable rates and lots of fine print. Simplified disclosures and recap reports could benefit student borrowers and their families significantly. Making the market more transparent and competitive may help address rising college costs in the long run. Improving the choice architecture through simplified and standardized disclosures can benefit subprime borrowers, mainly when facilitating a more competitive and transparent market. This approach may be better than outright bans while protecting consumers from predatory practices. There are two types of student loans: the federal government and private loans from financial institutions. Federal loans are need-based, subsidized, and have government guarantees. Private lenders find these loans highly profitable. Student loan borrowing faces similar issues as subprime mortgages. Misleading solicitations, complicated applications, and lack of understanding lead students and families to take on too much debt. Some colleges and lenders have engaged in unethical practices to push students toward particular private lenders. The government's policy of subsidizing and guaranteeing federal student loans while relying on private lenders for distribution has led to rent-seeking behavior and excessive profits in the private student loan industry. Policy recommendations include simplifying financial aid applications, improving transparency and comparing loan options, incentivizing college savings, and limiting private lender incentives. Credit cards provide a convenient mode of payment and source of liquidity but can lead to overspending and debt problems due to a lack of self-control and high interest rates. Average household credit card debt in the U.S. is substantial. Here's a summary of the key points. Sweden launched a privatized social security system that gave citizens many choices in how they invested their funds. The system had over 450 funds people could choose from, encouraging people to choose their portfolios actively. The system had a default fund for those who did not choose their portfolio. The designers had to decide whether to encourage people to choose the default, discourage them from choosing it, or remain neutral. Eliminating choice by only offering the default fund, option A, goes against libertarian paternalism. Forcing people to choose a fund, option E, would inevitably lead them to forfeit their contributions since some would fail to choose. Options B, discourage default, C, encourage default, and D, neutral, were possibilities. It is difficult to be neutral since how the default is described will impact people's choices. The key takeaway is that maximizing choice does not necessarily lead to the best outcomes. The Swedish system likely resulted in some people choosing poor portfolios due to the large number of complex choices and encouragement of active choosing. A better choice architecture with more brilliant default options and less encouragement of overly complex active choosing may have led to better outcomes. The key lessons from the Swedish experience are: choice alone does not guarantee good outcomes. More complex choices can lead to better decisions. Default options and how they are framed and described significantly impact outcomes. Default options should be carefully selected, and neutrality is challenging. Governments and choice architects must consider human tendencies towards inertia and status quo bias. Maximizing active choice is not always optimal. A simpler choice with good defaults is often better. Choice architecture matters for privatized social security systems. Good design can help citizens make better choices and have better outcomes. Design can lead to better choices and better outcomes. The critical points in the summary are: 2/3 of the participants actively chose their investment portfolios instead of accepting the default fund. The percentage of active choosers has declined to only 8% for new participants joining recently, likely due to less government encouragement and advertising. The default fund has been well designed, with a prudent mix of stocks and bonds, low fees, and good performance. In contrast, the aggregate portfolio of active choosers had a higher allocation to risky stocks, much more concentrated in Swedish companies, higher fees, and worse performance. The launch of the privatization program coincided with the peak of the stock market bubble, likely influencing many participants to choose riskier, stock-heavy portfolios. Had the launch occurred a couple of years later, portfolios likely would have been more balanced. While we cannot know participants' financial situations and needs, Based on typical investment principles, the default fund offers a more sensible choice for most investors. The aggregate portfolio of active choosers exhibited behaviors like trend following, overconfidence in local companies, and willingness to pay higher fees, often leading to worse outcomes. Despite efforts to encourage active choosing, the large market share attracted to the default fund suggests many participants were content with a simple, low-cost, professionally designed option. The declining rate of active choosing over time also points to the appeal of the default for new participants. In summary, while offering active choice and control is appealing in theory, this privatization program's outcomes suggest that most participants needed more knowledge and discipline to make optimal investment decisions on their own. The default fund attracted a significant market share by offering an easy, attractively designed option for investors seeking simplicity over active control. The Swedish government implemented a privatized social security system with many fund options for individuals. The fund that attracted the largest share of investments was a technology fund with very high returns in the 5 years leading up to the program launch. However, it lost a significant portion of its value shortly after. The timing of when the program launched had a significant impact on people's fund choices because they were swayed by recent high returns and invested heavily in funds that had been recently successful. The government encouraged participants to choose their portfolios, but only some changed after initially choosing. This shows that people tend to stick with the status quo. Advertising by the funds focused more on flashy messages and past returns rather than helpful information for investors. The advertising influenced people to choose funds with higher fees and risk. The Swedish experience shows that when governments offer people many complex choices, they must provide guidance and recommendations to help them choose. A better designed system would have encouraged the default fund option and guided people toward a simplified set of choices. If the US were to implement a similar Social Security privatization, the Swedish experience would provide many valuable lessons. A sound system would focus on a good default fund, guide people through simple choices, and only provide many options for those who want them. The more choices provided, the more help and guidance people need. Failure to learn this lesson led to problems in the design of the US Medicare prescription drug program. Here's a summary of the passage. Medicare Part D is a prescription drug benefit plan for seniors created during the Bush administration. It aimed to give seniors choices among many private plans and let the free market operate. However, Part D suffered from 4 significant defects. It provided little guidance to help seniors choose the best plans. Its default for most seniors was non-enrollment. It chose defaults at random for some who were automatically enrolled. It failed to serve the most vulnerable like the poor and less educated. Part D offered a menu of many choices but made it hard to choose well. It had complex rules, like coverage gaps and penalties. Many seniors found Part D confusing and overwhelming. Doctors and pharmacists also needed clarification. It took time for people to determine the best plan for their needs. While Part D improved coverage, its poor choice architecture and complexity caused problems. With better design, it could have worked much better. The key points are that Part D aimed to give choice and harness market forces but created confusion due to its complexity, lack of reasonable defaults, and failure to guide decision-making properly. It could have achieved its goals more successfully with a better understanding of how people choose. President Bush acknowledged that with its 46 plan choices, the Medicare Part D program would initially confuse and frustrate many seniors. However, he argued that the options and assistance from private groups would ultimately benefit participants. Part D plans enrollment was high, partly because many seniors were auto-enrolled through an employer or other coverage. However, many vulnerable seniors, especially those dually eligible for Medicare and Medicaid, did not actively choose a plan and were assigned to random default plans. These random plan assignments likely impaired the health of some participants in plans not well suited to their needs. Surveys found that while some reported improved access, over 20% said they had stopped taking medications due to issues with their plan. The government claimed that people's drug needs changed too much to allow intelligent assignment based on past use. However, for seniors on long-term medications, past use is predictive. Random assignment seems callous and irresponsible. In summary, while Part D led to more excellent coverage, its confusing array of choices and random default assignments, especially for the most vulnerable, undermined its success and philosophy. Simplification and more customized defaults could have improved outcomes. Here's a summary of insurance plans. There are many dimensions to compare plans like premiums, deductibles, copays, covered drugs, pharmacy networks, prior authorization, quantity limits, etc. This makes choosing a plan very difficult and time-consuming. Most seniors rely on passive information from mailers or call centers to choose a plan. The Medicare website is challenging to navigate and gives different cost estimates and recommendations to different users. Frequent changes in drug prices mean that the cheapest plan today may be different from the cheapest tomorrow. This adds to the confusion. Studies show that many seniors need help choosing a plan that minimizes out-of-pocket costs, even with simplified choices. They need help to connect their needs and risk preferences to the available plans. Possible nudges include: provide personalized plan recommendations based on an individual's conditions, prescriptions, and risk tolerance. This could help people choose plans better suited to them. Send reminders about the open enrollment period and provide information on reviewing one's plan choice. This may prompt more people to choose a plan each year actively. Require insurers to keep premiums and drug prices stable for an enrollment year. This adds predictability and allows people to choose plans based on their needs rather than chasing lower prices. Offer a smart default plan for those who do not choose. The default plan could be based on an individual's known conditions and prescriptions. People could still opt out of the default and choose another plan. Increase transparency about prior authorization, quantity limits, and other restrictions for each plan. This information may be hard to obtain currently but is essential for choosing a suitable plan. Provide coaching and education to help people evaluate how well their current plan meets their needs. This could encourage more optimal plan switching. In summary, well-designed nudges can prompt better health insurance choices while preserving freedom of choice. However, more transparency and a simplified, user-friendly experience are also needed. Kidneys and other organs for transplants are in high demand but short supply. Many people die while waiting for organs. Most organ donors are people declared brain dead but kept on life support. There are 12,000 to 15,000 potential donors in the U.S. annually, but fewer than half become actual donors. Getting consent from surviving family members is the major obstacle to increasing donations. Better choice architecture, like improved default rules and simplifying the donation process, could help increase the organ supply and save thousands of lives. For example, switching to an opt-out system where people are donors by default unless they opt out could help. Right now, people have to opt in to become donors. As seen in other countries, an opt-out system could take advantage of people's inertia and lead to higher donation rates. Also, simplifying the donation process by using a single question prompt on donor cards and licenses and training hospital staff to request donations effectively could help. How choices are framed and requests are made has a huge impact. In summary, small, low-cost changes to choice architecture can substantially increase the organ supply and save many lives at little cost. This is an excellent example of using choice architecture for good. Several approaches could increase the supply of organs available for transplant and save lives. Explicit consent. This requires people to take action to register as organ donors. However, due to inertia and hassle, many willing donors need help to register. Studies show a gap between people's willingness to donate and register. Routine removal. This allows the state to remove organs from deceased people or those in hopeless conditions without consent. This could increase supply dramatically but violates widely accepted principles about individual choice regarding one's body. Presumed consent makes everyone a presumed organ donor unless they opt out. This policy preserves choice but changes the default. Studies show that presumed consent can increase consent rates enormously compared to explicit consent. However, its effectiveness depends on an infrastructure matching donors and recipients. Mandated choice. This requires people to choose whether or not to be an organ donor, for example, when renewing a driver's license. This also addresses inertia but forces people to make an active choice. Evidence suggests that giving an unsure option may reduce its effectiveness. In summary, changing the default rule to presumed consent and implementing mandated choice policies could significantly boost organ supply and save lives while still respecting personal choice. However, success depends on a well-developed organ donation and transplant infrastructure. Governments have taken many actions to protect the environment, like reducing pollution and protecting endangered species. Many of these actions have succeeded, but some have been costly, inefficient, and counterproductive. Traditionally, governments have relied on command and control regulation, which dictates behavior and technology choices. This needs to be more efficient and restrict choice. Using choice architecture, like incentives and feedback, would be better to encourage environmentally friendly behavior while preserving freedom of choice. Two problems contribute to environmental harm. 1. Lack of proper incentives, like polluters not paying the total pollution costs, and 2. Lack of feedback, like people not realizing the environmental impact of their actions. Governments can use taxes, penalties, cap-and-trade systems, and other market mechanisms to fix incentive problems. These are more efficient and freedom-preserving than command and control regulation. In summary, choice architecture and incentive-based policies can help solve environmental problems in a less costly, more libertarian way than strict government mandates. Giving people information and proper incentives is better than restricting their choices. The authors acknowledge that proposals to use economic incentives like taxes or cap-and-trade systems to address environmental problems have been introduced previously. However, they argue that these approaches should be accepted even if most economists agree. The authors believe these incentive-based approaches are compatible with libertarian paternalism. They give people choice and flexibility compared to rigid command and control regulations. Companies also generally prefer these approaches because they impose lower costs. The authors argue that pricing pollution through taxes or cap-and-trade systems is often the best approach. These systems make environmental protection costs transparent, though they can be politically challenging to implement. The revenues from these systems could offset other costs or fund other programs to make them more palatable. For example, the U.S. acid rain cap-and-trade program has been very successful, dramatically reducing costs compared to a command and control approach. The program's benefits have far outweighed its costs. The authors hope similar approaches will be used to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. While getting prices right is most important, the authors suggest some nudge-like steps as interim measures or to complement pricing. Specifically, they recommend improving feedback to consumers through better information and disclosure. Examples include warning labels, product disclosures, workplace hazard communications, and environmental impact statements. Disclosure can motivate both markets and politics. One successful example of environmental disclosure is the Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act. Though initially just a bookkeeping measure, it has spurred substantial reductions in toxic releases as companies work to avoid public backlash from the disclosures. The toxic release inventory requires companies to disclose the chemicals they release into the environment. This disclosure requirement has been very successful in reducing toxic emissions. Companies want to avoid appearing on the environmental blacklist of the worst polluters, so they reduce emissions to avoid bad publicity and other costs. A similar greenhouse gas inventory requiring disclosure of greenhouse gas emissions could nudge companies to reduce emissions by using social pressure and concern over lousy publicity. Other disclosure requirements, like fuel economy stickers for cars showing estimated annual fuel costs, can also promote competition to be more environmentally friendly. More ambitious nudges could make energy use more visible to consumers to encourage conservation, like devices showing how much energy is being used or tools to share that information publicly. Voluntary programs where government works with companies to adopt more efficient and environmentally friendly practices, like the EPA's Green Lights and Energy Star programs, can also nudge better behavior without mandates. The critical insight is that disclosure and making the costs and impacts of behavior more salient can motivate change, even without requirements or bans. Nudges that harness social incentives and competitive pressures have effectively promoted environmental goals. There is consensus that children have a right to good education, but disagreement on how to achieve that. School choice is a polarizing issue. Libertarians and Milton Friedman support school choice and competition, which can improve education, especially for disadvantaged students. However, more choice only sometimes leads to the best outcomes in practice. Evidence suggests school choice programs can improve student performance, especially for younger, lower income, and minority students. Performance can improve 1 to 7% per year. However, many parents do not utilize school choices, and those who do often make poor choices. Plans are needed to help parents make better choices. The Worcester, Massachusetts case shows that even when more choice is offered, discouragement and an arduous process can prevent parents from exercising that choice. Officials stressed the program's limitations and unattractive parts and tried to highlight improvements to deter parents. The choice process was tedious, with many steps. Information was controlled, limiting access to tutoring and test prep companies. In summary, while school choice can benefit students, especially disadvantaged ones, programs must be designed to actually facilitate good choices by parents. More than merely offering more options are required. Plans should make the choice process easy to navigate, provide good information and enable access to support services. With well-designed programs, school choice can fulfill the goal of providing children with the right to a good education. Parents often need more information about school choices and stick with default options. Researchers in Charlotte, North Carolina, gave parents simplified information about school test scores and acceptance rates. With this information, parents chose schools with 70% higher test scores on average. Students who got into higher performing schools had better outcomes. The Boston-controlled choice system for assigning students to schools led to unintended gaming by parents. Savvy parents learned to manipulate their rankings to increase their chances of getting into top schools. Less savvy parents were disadvantaged. Boston eventually adopted a revised system designed by economists that were strategy-proof. In San Marcos, Texas, the school superintendent required students to apply to the local community college to graduate high school. With help from teachers and college staff, students received information about the college's financial benefits and helped apply. College enrollment from San Marcos High rose from 35% to 60%. This simple nudge effectively boosted college attainment for a low-income Latino student population. The key lessons are, simplifying information for parents and students can help them make much better school choices. Choice systems should be designed to avoid unintended strategic behavior and not disadvantage less sophisticated participants. Minor changes and nudges can effectively improve outcomes, even without significant resources. Consultants offer weekend sessions to help parents guide their children through college applications. The sessions include guidance on choosing colleges to apply to, completing application forms, writing personal essays, and applying for financial aid and scholarships. The goal is to increase students' likelihood of attending college by helping their parents support and encourage them during the application process. Doctors generally do not face significant financial consequences from malpractice lawsuits. Malpractice premiums are fixed and do not increase with the number of lawsuits. While doctors want to avoid lawsuits for reputational reasons, the financial risk is low. The malpractice system does a poor job of deterring medical negligence. Most patients who suffer from negligence do not sue. Many lawsuits that resulted in payouts to plaintiffs did not actually involve negligence. There needs to be more evidence that the system significantly deters poor medical care. The malpractice system requires patients to buy lottery tickets, which may result in a large payout but usually result in nothing. This is an inefficient use of resources. The authors propose allowing patients to waive their right to sue for negligence in exchange for lower medical costs. This could benefit both doctors and patients. Patients could choose plans with or without the right to sue. Most likely do if waiving the right to sue was the default. An even more ambitious proposal is only to allow lawsuits for intentional or reckless harm, not mere negligence. Patients could then choose to buy broader liability coverage. This could reduce healthcare costs. Other options include capping non-economic damages, using an administrative no-fault system, or fully privatizing marriage by eliminating government-sanctioned marriage. The overall goal is to increase freedom of contract in medical care and lower costs. Even minor improvements could help address the healthcare crisis. Privatizing marriage is one way to balance religious freedom and individual liberty. The key arguments in the passage are, marriage should be privatized by eliminating state-issued marriage licenses. Instead, the government should only offer civil unions, which provide legal rights and benefits to couples. Religious and private organizations would perform marriage ceremonies. Privatizing marriage would protect religious freedom while providing legal rights to couples. Religious groups could set their own rules for marriage, and the state would not endorse any particular relationships. State control of marriage is outdated. Originally, marriage licenses were meant to regulate sexuality and child rearing, but now people have rights to sex and parenthood outside of marriage. Marriage was also meant to make it hard for couples to divorce, but now divorce is more accepted. Private organizations and couples could design marriages that suit their needs. Different groups could have different rules for marriage based on their values and beliefs. Couples would have more choice in the type of marriage they want. Legal rights and benefits for couples could still be provided through civil unions regulated by the state. So couples would not lose legal protections and entitlements. But the state would not officially recognize marriages. So, the key proposal is that state-recognized marriage should be abolished and replaced with private marriages and state civil unions. This would increase freedom and choice while still providing legal protections for couples. However, the government would not favor or endorse any particular type of relationship. Marriage used to be more permanent, but now exiting from marriage is relatively easy and familiar. Exceptionally few people choose covenant marriage even when it is available. This shows that most people prefer the flexibility of non-covenant marriage. Official marriage licenses create an unrealistic dichotomy between married and single. In reality, there are many variations of relationships. It would be better to allow people to structure relationships as they choose. The concerns that official marriage protects children and more vulnerable partners can be addressed through other means, like direct support requirements or carefully designed default rules upon dissolution of a relationship. Official marriage is not necessary or sufficient for this. Official marriage is not very libertarian. While no one is forced to marry, The state monopolizes the legal form of marriage, limits who can marry, and provides benefits only through that form. It would be better to rely on civil unions and private institutions. The benefits of official marriage are low, while the costs are not huge but include unnecessary polarization and confusion. It would be better for marriage to be a private matter, not a state matter. Rather than debating the nature of official marriage, we should focus on choosing appropriate default rules and nudges for people making long-term commitments, whether through marriage, civil unions, or private means. The goal should be to clarify rights and obligations and protect the vulnerable, especially partners and children. Default rules usually reflect people's explicit or likely implicit promises to each other. So in summary, the key arguments are: 1. Official marriage is not necessary and has some downsides. 2. Long-term relationships should be a private matter, not a state matter, but 3. Good default rules and choice architecture are still needed to support people in those relationships and protect the vulnerable. The overall stance is one of libertarian paternalism toward relationship commitment and dissolution. Charlize Theron ought to star in commercials for the auto assistant. This hands-free device connects to your mobile phone via Bluetooth. It allows you to do practical tasks like scheduling meetings, finding restaurant recommendations, getting directions, or texting a friend through simple voice commands while driving. Think of it as an in-car Siri, Apple's virtual assistant. While the laws against distracted driving rightly prevent most phone use behind the wheel, voice-activated solutions can make driving safer and more convenient by allowing essential communication and information without manual interfacing. 4. Reciprocity ring. A behavioral economist tries to impose some selfish incentives for generosity, as in save more tomorrow. However, true altruism exists, and simple mechanisms could significantly expand its reach. One idea: a reciprocity ring. Individuals join the ring by pledging to be on call for others in the group for a certain number, a dozen nudges 231 hours per month. When you need help, with tasks like moving, gardening, childcare, or auto repair, you can call on ring members, who will assist, expecting nothing but the knowledge that when they call on the group, help will come. Traditional volunteering matches supply with demand inefficiently. A reciprocity ring pools hours and matches them dynamically through mutual aid. Anthropologists note that direct reciprocal gift exchanges build social cohesion, so a reciprocity ring could strengthen the community while mobilizing altruism. Count us in. 5. The civility check. Next time you send an email, take a second to paste it into a website that scores the message for positive and negative language, then provides a civility check. Some words, like please, thanks, and congratulations, increase the score. Others, like an idiot, stupid, and hate, decrease it. If your email gets a low score, reword it to be more constructive before sending it. A nudge as simple as a few seconds of feedback could help reduce hostile communication, foster goodwill, and make interactions more productive. The technology to provide such feedback already exists. 6. The forgetting tax. Memory is malleable, and nostalgists are prone to rosy retrospection. When something is gone, we tend to forget its annoying qualities and remember only the good. This can make romanticizing lost pleasures, old toys, the multi-purpose station wagon, or past relationships easy. However, while memory's shortcuts often serve us well, they can also lead us astray. What if you had to pay a small forgetting tax when disposing of an item or relationship? Suppose you had to pay 5% of an item's value when throwing it away or selling it at a yard sale, or 1% of the total time invested in an ended relationship. In that case, that fee might encourage slightly more realistic assessments. Having to pause and assign a monetary value could trigger a more balanced accounting of pros and cons, blunting nostalgia's rosy revisionism. Not a serious policy proposal, just a nudge to counter the effects of a behavioral bias. Money, after all, is memory's nemesis. What we pay for, we remember. 7. The identity verifier. Our assumptions about people depend heavily on superficial cues in many situations. 232 extensions and objections. Appearance, ethnicity, gender, and age often shape how we expect individuals to behave or what we perceive them to be capable of. These biases are hard to avoid, but performance-based assessments can help. Consider an online identity verifier allowing individuals to demonstrate actual abilities and skills through web-based tests. Job applicants could choose what competencies and traits to have verified according to a particular position. Standardized critical thinking, communication, creativity, and diligence scores would then be issued. While imperfect, a system based on relevant performance measures rather than perceptions could help reduce bias in hiring and advancement. Anonymous verifications may even help in reducing discrimination. Of course, Any assessment opens the door to gaming strategies, and some qualities, like judgment, involve subtlety beyond the reach of simple tests. However, nudging hiring and promotion slightly closer to merit-based decisions could benefit individuals and organizations. For an approach so reliant on technology, an identity verifier may prove surprisingly humanizing. 8. The Fruit Bowl Rewards Card. Most customer rewards programs dispense benefits that promote overconsumption rather than health or sustainability. Airline miles, for example, subsidize discretionary travel. What if rewards reflected wellness and social goals instead? A produce market, for instance, could offer a Fruit Bowl Rewards Card. Each $10 or more purchase earns credits toward free produce or fruit baskets for local charities like food banks, shelters, or schools. Customers win points for fruit and vegetable selections and bonus points for organic or locally sourced items. Points could also be redeemed for information on nutrition or recipes. This nudges individuals toward better health choices while also tangibly serving community needs. A win-win rewards realignment. 9. The Happiness Dashboard. Self-help books tout the benefits of gratitude journals, acts of kindness, exercise, social interaction, and mindfulness, all of which science suggests contribute to well-being. However, who has time for them all? A streamlined solution could be an integrated happiness dashboard that nudges users a dozen nudges 233 toward a balanced portfolio of happiness-enhancing behaviors. On your mobile device or computer, the dashboard would track things like the number of gratitude entries recorded, friendly greetings offered, hold doors, smile, make eye contact, minutes of exercise logged, good deeds registered, relaxation breathing time recorded, and meetups scheduled with friends or family. You choose which factors to monitor and target levels for each, and the app provides reminders and motivation to help you achieve them, with points and badges offered as rewards. A happiness dashboard could make well-being less nebulous and more achievable by synthesizing research into an easy-to-use interface focused on concrete actions. Joy, after all, is a habit. 10. The 10-Minute Tidy Challenge. Most people struggle to straighten and organize their living or workspaces due to conflicting commitments and constant distractions. However, disorder and clutter sap cognitive resources and undermine productivity. A 10-minute tidy challenge could help. Here is how it works. Users receive a daily text message prompting them to spend 10 minutes organizing and tidying a selected home or office area. Each area is featured for one day every week. The message includes links to helpful ideas for streamlining that space. Those who meet the 10-minute tidy challenge get an encouraging message and can opt to receive an accountability partner for extra motivation. Focusing people's attention on a short, achievable period is a tiny intervention that adds to greater order and efficiency. Starting is often the hardest part, so specific, time-limited nudges help bypass inertia and make progress possible. If you can tidy up for 10 minutes daily, everything in its place is within reach. 11. The Nightly News Nudge. Exposure to frequent coverage of natural disasters, violent crime, or human conflict can breed anxiety and fuel a sense that danger lurks around every corner. Of course, commercially driven media have incentives to focus on sensational and uncertain stories, but journalists also have a responsibility to report events accurately and 234 extensions and objections objectively. One small remedy for news-induced stress journalists could adopt is a nightly news nudge, ending broadcasts with a short, balanced report on any measurable social or environmental improvements from that day, focusing briefly on society's forward strides, scientific or technological advancements, recovering endangered species, literacy campaign victories, and acts of human decency. Anything substantive and optimistic could help neutralize negativity bias without compromising journalistic integrity. Anchors might say something like, "And finally, signs of progress," before sharing one inspiring success story. This nudge toward more constructive coverage reminds us that it is not all doom and gloom. There are daily causes for hope if we notice them. Ending on an uptick. 12. The Senior Sophomore. Many colleges struggle with retention and graduation rates, especially for students from disadvantaged backgrounds. Transitioning from high school to more demanding university coursework proves difficult for some, and without a strong support system, many talented individuals become discouraged and drop out. Enter the Senior Sophomore, an upperclassman, ideally from a similar demographic, assigned to mentor a sophomore through weekly check-ins, guidance, and encouragement. The Senior Sophomore has walked the same path and overcome the same obstacles, so they are uniquely equipped. The current U.S. income tax system is very complex. An automatic tax return where the IRS provides taxpayers with a pre-filled return can simplify the process and reduce costs. Websites like Stick.com allow people to commit to achieving their goals by putting money at stake. If people fail, the money goes to charity. This approach is effective in helping people achieve goals like losing weight or quitting smoking. The CARES program in the Philippines helps smokers quit by having them deposit the money they would have spent on cigarettes into a bank account. If they pass a urine test showing they have quit after 6 months, they get the money back. This program has been very successful. Requiring motorcycle riders who do not want to wear helmets to take a particular driving course and show proof of health insurance is a less intrusive way to promote safety than an outright ban on helmetless riding. Allowing gambling addicts to put themselves on a list banning them from casinos and collecting winnings is an innovative way to help them control their addiction. The Destiny Health Plan gives people incentives like vitality bucks for exercising, going to the doctor, and other healthy behaviors. This approach combines health insurance with nudges to encourage healthy lifestyles. The $1 a day program pays teenage mothers $1 daily each day they are not pregnant. This small incentive is effective in reducing repeat teen pregnancies. Putting a red light on central air conditioning systems to notify people when they need to change the filter is an easy nudge that can prevent system failures and high repair costs. These examples show innovative ways to use small incentives, reminders, commitment devices, and choice architecture to help people achieve life goals, improve health, and simplify everyday processes. The key is designing nudges that are non-intrusive but effective in guiding people's behavior. No bite nail polish and disulfiram make indulging in bad habits unpleasant to help people change those habits. They work by having the reflective system discipline the automatic system. The Civility check proposal suggests detecting angry emails and cautioning the sender before sending them to promote more civility. A more robust version could prevent sending for 24 hours. Though waiting for technology, the authors have adopted manually sending angry emails to each other to edit. Objections to nudges include: the slippery slope argument is that even modest nudges will lead to unwanted government overreach and coercion. However, nudges can be evaluated on their own merits, opt-out rights reduce slipperiness, and some choice architecture is inevitable. Government non-intervention is unrealistic. Evil nudgers and bad nudges, choice architects, whether companies or governments, may have incentives to nudge for their benefit, not the individuals. However, disclosure and transparency can help address this, as can democratic checks on government nudging. Competition in the private sector also provides some checks. Government incompetence, the argument that government lacks the knowledge and expertise to nudge well. However, governments have successfully nudged in areas like environmental protection and public health. Governments also have more knowledge and expertise than often assumed. Government nudges can also be flexible and responsive. Individual sovereignty, the argument that nudging infringes on individual freedom of choice and autonomy. However, the liberty to choose is constrained and influenced by choice architecture regardless. As long as opt-out rights are provided, individual sovereignty is preserved with libertarian paternalism. In summary, while objections to nudging exist, there are also counter-arguments. With transparency, disclosure, limits on coercion, and preservation of choice, libertarian paternalism can provide benefits while respecting individual autonomy. Natural and public choice architects can have conflicts of interest, so we must align incentives and increase transparency. We should not assume public architects are always more dangerous. The invisible hand works best for simple, frequently purchased products. The market may fail for complex products like mortgages, and people can get exploited before realizing it. We should worry about all choice architects, public and private. We need rules to reduce abuses, promote competition, limit interest groups, and encourage the public good. Transparency is key. People can make their own choices, so opt-out rights are essential. However, for some groups, like people with low incomes, nudges can help without doing much harm. Learning from mistakes has limits. Some critics oppose any forced exchanges or redistribution. However, nudges typically have small costs for those unaffected while helping those in need. Most people likely want to help others, and relative losers deserve little sympathy. Most libertarian critics prefer required choosing over nudges to maximize liberty. However, for complex choices with many options, there may be better outcomes than the required choice. Nudges can help without eliminating choice. In summary, while choice and liberty matter, nudges and modest redistribution can benefit society and help the disadvantaged without unduly restricting freedom or harming others. However, we must be vigilant about the incentives and interests of the choice architects. Forcing people to choose is only sometimes wise or possible. Remaining completely neutral is often impossible. The publicity principle suggests that any nudging policy should be transparent and defendable to the public. Subliminal advertising violates this principle and should be avoided. However, manipulative policies like vivid anti-drug ads can satisfy the publicity principle if done openly. Neutrality is sometimes essential, like with voting. However, for most policies, pure neutrality is impossible, and some helpful nudging is acceptable if transparent and aimed at benefiting people. The evaluation of any nudge depends on its effects and whether it helps or harms. While some nudges are optional, choice architecture itself is inevitable. Education campaigns are optional nudges depending on whether the nudger can help the nudgee. In sum, nudging should be done carefully and transparently to benefit people and respect their autonomy. However, some nudging is often necessary and even helpful. The key is balancing neutrality and paternalism. The potential for beneficial nudging depends on the following. The nudgers have the expertise and can guess what is best for the nudgees. Nudging makes more sense when choices are complex, and nudgers have expertise. Either minor differences in individual preferences or the ability to detect preferences. Nudging is good when most people prefer the same thing or differences can be observed. Low risks of self-dealing and incompetence by the nudgers. We must worry about nudgers acting in self-interest or making mistakes. Some argue that we should go beyond libertarian paternalism to mandatory rules when people's lives would improve. However, we define libertarian paternalism as actions people can easily avoid by opting out, like one-click paternalism. The asymmetric paternalism approach proposes helping the least sophisticated while imposing negligible costs on the most sophisticated. It justifies regulations like, they require sun lamp timers to prevent overuse if the costs are low and risks of harm are high. They impose cooling off periods for some purchases where emotions run high, and decisions are infrequent, like door-to-door sales. The costs are often low, while the benefits of avoiding regret are high. Mandatory waiting periods for big life decisions like divorce. This ensures time for reflection on critical and frequent choices where emotions are intense. While some regulations, like occupational safety laws, are non-libertarian, they can be defended based on human errors and fallibilities. However, we resist going too far down the paternalistic path, wanting to stop at small costs and preserve freedom of choice. The specific stopping point is hard to define, but we aim for the lightest touch compatible with welfare. The authors argue that there is a third way between heavy-handed government mandates and unregulated free markets. This third way is libertarian paternalism, in which choice architects nudge people in directions that will improve their lives while still preserving freedom of choice. The authors make two central claims. Small features of social situations can have huge impacts on behavior. Choice architecture is unavoidable and dramatically influences our decisions. Libertarian paternalism is not oxymoronic. Choice architects can nudge people while still preserving freedom of choice. The authors explore many examples of libertarian paternalism, including, Save More Tomorrow, a plan that increases employees' retirement contributions over time. This nudge exploits inertia and loss aversion to help people save more. Following the herd, people have a tendency to follow social norms, often without realizing it. Libertarian paternalism can set good social norms and encourage people to follow them. Choice architecture, seemingly irrelevant details, like default options and ordering effects, can significantly impact choice and behavior. Choice architects should design situations to benefit people. The authors argue that libertarian paternalism could serve as a real third way between rigid government mandates and laissez-faire policymaking. Their approach could help progress on issues where Democrats and Republicans traditionally disagree. Overall, the book makes a case for designing situations and policies that gently nudge people toward better choices while preserving freedom of choice. The author proposes that 401k plans should automatically enroll eligible employees at a 3% contribution rate, matching the first 1% at 100%, the next 3% at 50%, for a total match of 3.5% if the employee contributes 6%. This combination of automatic enrollment and match incentives is designed to attract lower-income employees and pass non-discrimination testing. While critics may argue with some details, the overall policy exemplifies libertarian paternalism or nudging. It does not mandate any employer action but provides incentives for them to make automatic enrollment the default. This policy helps employees save for retirement while maintaining freedom of choice. Here are summaries of the sources. George A., Janet L. Yellen, and Michael L. Katz analyze trends in out-of-wedlock childbearing in the U.S. They find that socioeconomic factors and welfare policy explain little of the increase. Instead, it mainly reflects declining social stigma and increased female autonomy. Alkohami and Slovic show that people's perceptions of the risk and benefits of an activity are inversely related. As perceived benefit increases, perceived risk decreases, and vice versa. This relationship holds even for experts across many domains. Allais critiques the expected utility theory and argues that people do not make choices that maximize expected utility. He shows that people's choices in risky or uncertain situations often violate the independence axiom of expected utility theory. Americs and Zeldis find that as people age, they tend to hold a larger share of safe assets, like treasury bills, and a smaller share of risky assets, like stocks. However, there is significant heterogeneity in how people's portfolio allocations change with age. Ash finds that people's opinions can be swayed by hearing the unanimous opinions of others, even when those opinions are incorrect. People have a solid drive to conform and gain the approval of others. Ayers and Gertner show how gap-filling default rules in contracts can be used strategically by parties seeking an advantage. The default terms that fill in missing provisions in incomplete contracts have essential consequences because parties tend to stick with default options. Ayers and Nailbuff argue that policymakers and businesses should require more skin in the game by forcing people and institutions to bear more risk and responsibility for their actions. Requiring skin in the game can help fix principal-agent problems and lead to better outcomes. Badger et al. Show that drug addicts are willing to pay more and travel farther to obtain drugs when they are in a state of solid craving. This suggests that craving for drugs affects how people make intertemporal trade-offs and decisions that involve weighing immediate and delayed rewards. Baker and Emery find that newlywed couples tend to underestimate the chances of eventually divorcing compared to statistics on divorce rates. People are unrealistically optimistic when projecting what may happen in their own lives and relationships. The summaries continue with additional sources in alphabetical order by first author's last name. Here is a summary of the works by Robert Cialdini. Robert Cialdini is a professor of psychology and marketing known for his research on persuasion and social influence. His book Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion, 1993, explores the persuasion techniques of social influence and compliance. It introduces 6 fundamental principles of influence: reciprocity, commitment and consistency, social proof, authority, liking, and scarcity. Cialdini's other works expand on these ideas. His article Crafting Normative Messages to Protect the Environment, 2003, examines how social norms can be activated to encourage pro-environmental behavior. With colleagues, he studied interventions to reduce littering in public places. His revised textbook Influence, Science and Practice, 2000, provides an overview of social influence for students and professionals. Cialdini has also studied preferences for saving lives and the choice paradoxes involved in low-probability, high-consequence events. His research explores how people make decisions under uncertainty and in unfamiliar circumstances. Overall, Cialdini's work focuses on how social norms and psychological principles shape judgment and decision-making in various domains. The summary outlines Cialdini's significant research areas, highlighting his well-known studies of persuasion techniques, social influence, and the psychology of decision-making. The assistant identifies some of Cialdini's most influential books and papers spanning over 20 years to provide a high-level sense of the evolution and applications of his work. The study analyzed the Medicare Part D prescription drug benefit program that started in 2006. The program offers multiple private plan options for Medicare beneficiaries. The authors examined enrollment numbers and patterns to gain insights into how well the program was meeting the needs of beneficiaries, especially low-income individuals who receive extra subsidies. The study found, many low-income beneficiaries still need to enroll in Part D or select a plan that matches their needs. About 25 to 30% did not enroll at all, and many who did enroll picked plans that did not cover their medications or had high out-of-pocket costs. Low-income beneficiaries needed help navigating the complex choice environment and comparing numerous plan options to higher-income beneficiaries. They were more prone to make suboptimal plan choices or avoid enrollment altogether due to feeling overwhelmed. Outreach and education campaigns had only modest success in helping low-income individuals enroll and choose suitable plans. More hands-on, customized assistance and guidance were needed. Auto-enrollment of low-income beneficiaries in benchmark plans with no premium and low out-of-pocket costs showed promising results for improving enrollment and appropriate plan selection. However, some still incurred high drug costs because the plan did not cover their medications. The balance between providing more healthcare choices and complexity versus less choice and more default options needed to be optimized based on beneficiaries' abilities and willingness to navigate available choices. A one-size-fits-all approach would not work. The authors concluded that additional program changes and assistance were needed to truly help the most vulnerable Medicare beneficiaries gain access to the drug coverage and financial protection that Part D promised. New education, marketing, choice architecture, and plan design models could help make the program work better for millions of dual-eligible beneficiaries. Here are high-level summaries of the requested sources. Public support for organ donation versus undersupply of organs. The Iowa Organ Procurement Study surveyed Iowans on their support for organ donation and found high public support but an undersupply of organs. Attributed undersupply to failure of next of kin to consent to donation requests and suggested policy solutions. Golden eggs and hyperbolic discounting proposed a theoretical model of hyperbolic discounting, in which people have a stronger preference for immediate rewards over rewards shortly. Argued this can lead to dynamic inconsistency and undersaving. Seductive Poison, a survivor's memoir of life in the People's Temple, the cult led by Jim Jones that ended in a mass murder-suicide. Described the author's experiences of abuse and mind control that kept members obedient to Jones. Remarks on America's Health Insurance Plans, AHIP, a speech by Michael Levitt, Secretary of Health and Human Services, praising private health insurers for their innovations in promoting transparency and value. Argued insurers should lead in preventing chronic disease, investing in information technology, and controlling costs. The Emotional Brain summarized research on the neurological basis of emotion and its influence on cognition and behavior. Proposed that emotional processing involves connections between the prefrontal cortex, amygdala, and other structures. Emotion and reasoning are deeply intertwined rather than separate. Final Moments, damages for pain and suffering prior to death, argued that tort law should allow compensating individuals' pain and suffering in the moments before their death due to another's negligence. Considered arguments for and against this view based on concepts of deterrence, corrective justice, and the estate's interests. When questions change behavior, reported experiments show that merely measuring people's intentions or attitudes on certain behaviors can affect the likelihood of those behaviors occurring. For example, asking people about voting increased their propensity to vote. Effects were more significant when there was ambiguity or uncertainty about the behavior. Effects of fear and specificity of recommendation upon attitudes and behavior. Experiment testing how persuasive communications provoking fear and recommending specific actions influenced attitudes and behavior. Found fear appeals that specified a recommended action, rather than leaving it open-ended, were most effective in motivating behavior change. Reversals of preference between bids and choices in gambling decisions. Reported experiments showing framing effects whereby people's preferences reversed between valuation modes. When choosing between gambles, people preferred low probability chances of winning large rewards. However, when bidding on the same gambles, they preferred high probability chances of smaller rewards. This reversal was attributed to differences in mental accounting across framing conditions. Here is a summary of the sources: Redlmeyer, D. A., J. Katz, and D. Kahneman, 2003. Payne, 104, 187-194. Study on Patients' Memories of Colonoscopies. Schkadi, D. A., and D. Kahneman, 1998. Psychological Science, 9, 340-346. Study on Focusing Illusion and Judgments of Life Satisfaction. Satovsky, T. 1992. The Joyless Economy. Discusses lack of correspondence between satisfaction and consumption. Sen. A. 1999. Development as Freedom. Discusses capabilities and functionings as the core of well-being. Schiller, R. J. 2000. Irrational Exuberance. Examines speculative bubbles in financial markets. Silverstein, S. 1974. Where the Sidewalk Ends. Collection of Poems for Children. Simon, R., and Amp, J. Haggerty, 2007. Mortgage Mess Shines a Light on Brokers' Role, news article on the role of mortgage brokers in a housing crisis. Simonson, I. 1990. Effective Purchase Quantity and Timing on Variety-Seeking Behavior. Study of how to purchase quantity and timing influence the desire for variety. Slovak, P. M. L. Finnegan, E. Peters, and D. G. McGregor, 2002. The Affect Heuristic. In Tigilovich, D. Griffin, and Amp, D. Kahneman, eds. Heuristics and Biases, pages 397-420. New York, Cambridge University Press. Review of Research on Affect Heuristic. Smith, V., K. Gifford, S. Kramer, and Amp, L. E. Ulam, 2006. The Transition of Dual Eligibles to Medicare Part D Report on the Transition of Low-Income Subsidy Recipients to Medicare Part D. Stevenson, D. 2005. Dear People, Remembering Jonestown. Collection of letters discussing memories of the Jonestown Massacre. Sunstein, C. R. 1998. Selective Fatalism. Journal of Legal Studies, 27, 799-823. Discusses implications of selective fatalism for law and policy. Sunstein, C. R. 2002. Risk and Reason, Safety, Law, and the Environment. Discuss the implications of bounded rationality and heuristics for risk regulation. The paper provides a review of the concepts of choice architecture and libertarian paternalism, which aim to guide choices by influencing the context in which people make decisions without removing options or significantly changing incentives. It discusses various behavioral factors that shape choices, including anchoring and adjustment, availability heuristic, conformity, priming, and framing. The paper also considers strategies of choice architects to improve choices, such as providing default options, simplifying complex choices, utilizing mappings, and giving feedback. It examines applications of these strategies in areas like incentives, consumer protection, environmental protection, health, and education. The authors argue for an approach of libertarian paternalism that recognizes human limits but preserves freedom of choice. Here's a summary of the key points: credit markets, credit cards, 142 to 144, growing indebtedness, difficulty obtaining and paying off, minimum payments and interest charges, mortgages, 132 to 138, fixed rate, variable rate, and predatory loans, foreclosures, good faith estimates, home ownership and equity protection act, student loans, 138 to 141, federal and private loans, loan defaults, income-based repayment plans, environmental issues, air and water pollution, climate change, ozone layer, deforestation, etc. 183 to 196 problems, externalities, the tragedy of the commons, free riding solutions, cap and trade, incentives, nudges, transparency, behavior change, healthcare, costs, insurance, treatment options, drug compliance, organ donations, medical malpractice, 207 to 214 libertarian paternalism applied, prescription drug plan, organ donations, investments, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, index funds, portfolio theory, risk, default options, 118 to 131 behavioral factors, loss aversion, inertia, feedback, salience, error expectation, rules of thumb, mental accounting, market timing, education, school choice, vouchers, charter schools, testing, and accountability, 199 to 206 status quo bias, incentive conflicts, and controlled choice, examples from U.S. cities showing various degrees of school choice, libertarian paternalism, soft paternalism that maintains freedom of choice, nudges behavior, arguments for efficiency, freedom of choice, and against slippery slope, government overreach, applied in various domains, from the environment to healthcare to finance, a third way. In summary, the index covers fundamental concepts in behavioral economics, finance, public policy, and more, documenting problems arising from human behavior and limitations and potential solutions to improve choices and social welfare. The author explains the concept and importance of choice architecture. Choice architecture is how options are structured, organized, and presented, significantly impacting people's choices. The influences of defaults, salience, and mappings on choice are discussed. Defaults have a robust anchoring effect. Making specific options more salient or prominent can sway choices. Mappings, or how options are categorized and framed, also impact decisions. Heuristics like availability, representativeness, and anchoring bias judgment systematically. Rules of thumb are helpful but can also lead to errors. Overconfidence in probabilistic knowledge and judgments is common. The two-system model of thinking, reflective and automatic system, is explained. The reflective system is slower and contemplative, while the automatic system is fast, intuitive, and impressionistic. Choice architecture can be designed to encourage either system. The concept of libertarian paternalism is introduced. It means policies designed to influence choices to make choosers better off while respecting freedom of choice. Nudges are interventions embodying libertarian paternalism. Applications of choice architecture like increasing organ donation, saving for retirement, environment conservation, and improving health are discussed. Issues around marriage, contracts, and consent are also explored. Objections to and limitations of libertarian paternalism and choice architecture are addressed. Paternalism may coerce and reduce autonomy. There are concerns about government overreach and playing God. Evaluation of nudges and weighing of plural values are complex with no consensus. But choice architecture can make benevolent designs compatible with freedom. That covers the essence and main highlights from the summary. Let me know if you want me to explain or expand on any summary part. Here is a summary of the document outline. Part 1, Humans and Econs discusses behavioral biases and tendencies that lead to poor decision-making. Explains how choice architecture and nudges can help. Part 2, Money discusses strategies to improve decision-making for savings, investments, credit markets, and Social Security. Part 3, Health discusses strategies to improve decision-making for prescription drugs, organ donations, and environmental protection. Part 4, Freedom discusses strategies to improve school choice, health insurance choice, and marriage. Part 5, Extensions and Objections provides additional nudges and responses to objections against nudging. Discusses libertarian paternalism. The document discusses how nudges and choice architecture can help improve decision-making in many areas of life, including money, health, education, environment, etc. The nudges aim to help people make better choices while preserving freedom of choice. Book link click here.